Hello guys, T Reaper here, and today I will be going over my Big Ten football predictions, and I will go through every single game the Big Ten teams are playing. So this is going to be a relatively long video, so without further ado, let's get started. I'm going to go from east to west, and the eastmost team is Rutgers or Maryland, but it doesn't really matter, they're both on the East Coast. So Rutgers' schedule is Temple, Syracuse on the road, Delaware, at Michigan, Ohio State, Michigan State, at Northwestern, the bye, at Illinois, Wisconsin, at Indiana, at Penn State, and Maryland. So I think Rutgers gets the win against Temple, at Syracuse, and at Delaware, or against Delaware. Maybe thinking, Rutgers 3-0? Yes, they're going to start 3-0. But then they hit the gauntlet. They got at Michigan, Ohio State, Michigan State, and at Northwestern. Those are all losses. They're at 3-4 heading into their bye week. But luckily for Rutgers, they head to Illinois and get that win. But then they have Wisconsin, at Indiana, at Penn State, and Maryland. They're losing all four of those games. So I have Rutgers 4-8 and 1-8 in the Big Ten. I don't think they're going to make a bowl game, but they have a chance to. They can snag a win against Michigan or Michigan State or even Maryland. But they're not a Big Ten or playoff contender. Sorry about that camera angle. So next is Maryland. Their schedule is West Virginia, Howard, at Illinois, Kent State, Iowa, at Ohio State, the bye week, at Minnesota, Indiana, Penn State, Michigan, and Rutgers. I don't think they'll beat West Virginia, but they'll beat Howard and Illinois. Then Kent State is a win. They're going to beat a MAC team. Kent State may be the best team in the MAC, but it's Big Ten team. Then we've got Iowa. They're not going to beat Iowa or Ohio State. So they're 3-3 heading into the bye week, which is pretty respectable. Then they have Minnesota, which is a win, but they're not beating Indiana, Penn State, Michigan State, or Michigan. But they'll beat Rutgers. They'll end the season 5-7. I don't think they'll make a bowl, but they have a chance to snag one against Michigan, Michigan State, or even West Virginia. They won't win the Big Ten, and they won't make the playoff. Penn State. They travel to Wisconsin. Then they host Ball State, Auburn, and Villanova. Then they play Indiana. Then they travel to Iowa. The bye week, Illinois, at Ohio State, at Maryland, Michigan, Rutgers, and at Michigan State. So at Wisconsin is going to be an L. Ball State's a win. Now, Auburn is one of the toughest teams to predict in college football. They're either 7-5 or 11-1. There's no in between. So, for that reason, I'll have them beating Auburn. Villanova, this isn't basketball. They're beating Villanova. They'll lose to Indiana and Iowa, so they'll head into the bye week at 500. They'll beat Illinois. They won't beat Ohio State. Maryland, Michigan, and Rutgers are all wins. At Michigan State. This is a trap game. I think Michigan State's a little underrated this year. Coach Mel Tucker's second year. He's getting a lot of recruits. So they have motivation to win. So they're going to lose to Michigan State. And it's very tough to win at Spartan Stadium as well. So I'm not going to be biased here. It's a loss. Bowl. They'll make a bowl. Big Ten and playoff. No, they're not winning the Big Ten. Ohio State. At Minnesota. Oregon. Tulsa. Akron. At Rutgers. Maryland. The bye week. At Indiana. Penn State. At Nebraska. Purdue. Michigan State. And at Michigan. So they'll beat Minnesota, Oregon, and Tulsa to start off 3-0. Then Akron's an easy win, Rutgers is an easy win, and Maryland's an easy win. So they'll head into the bye week 6-0. They'll be well rested, but then they haven't had a tough game since Oregon. Then they go to Indiana. That is a trap game, and they will be trapped to lose. They'll beat Penn State, Nebraska, Purdue, Michigan State, and Michigan to end the year 11-1. They're a Big Ten and playoff contender, and they'll obviously make a bowl game. Next up, we've got Michigan. They play Western Michigan, Washington, Northern Illinois, Rutgers, at Wisconsin, at Nebraska, the bye week. Northwestern, at Michigan State, Indiana, at Penn State, at Maryland, and Ohio State. They'll beat Western Michigan. They won't beat Washington. Washington's usually a pretty good football team. Then they got Northern Illinois. They'll beat them. They'll beat Rutgers. They won't beat Wisconsin or Nebraska. They have the bye week. They'll probably find a way to lose that, but it's the bye week, so they can't. Then they play Northwestern. They'll beat them. At Michigan State. This Michigan team is not as good as they were last year. And Michigan State's going to be better. So they'll lose to Michigan State, especially since it's a road game. Then you got Indiana, that's a loss. At Penn State, that's a loss. Maryland, they'll beat Maryland, even though it's on the road. And Ohio State, that's a loss. I don't think they'll make a bowl game, but they have a chance to snag Michigan State or Nebraska, even Washington on a good day. But they won't win the Big Ten or make the playoff. Now my Sparties are next. The schedule is at Northwestern, Youngstown State, at Miami of Florida, Nebraska, Western Kentucky, at Rutgers, at Indiana, the bye week, Michigan, Purdue, Maryland, Ohio State, and Penn State. So they'll beat Northwestern. I don't think Northwestern is as good as they were last year. They'll obviously beat an FCS team in Youngstown State. At Miami, they're another team that's tough to predict. They're like either 7-5 or 11-1. But it's a road game. I think Michigan State will lose that, unfortunately. When you got Nebraska, that's a win. Western Kentucky is a win. It's also homecoming. They'll beat Rutgers. They won't beat Indiana. They'll head into the bye week 5-2, possibly ranked. Then they'll beat Michigan. They'll beat Purdue. They'll beat Maryland. They'll give Ohio State a fight, but they won't beat them. And then they'll beat Penn State. Yes, Michigan State will make a bowl. I don't think they're a Big Ten contender. I think they're a year or two away from that. And they won't make the playoff. Now, Indiana. This is the most underrated team in the Big Ten and possibly all of college football. Even though they're ranked at like 9th or something. They're just extremely underrated. They travel to Iowa. Iowa's a tough place to play, but Indiana has the power to beat them. But I'll get to that in a moment. Then they have Idaho, Cincinnati, at Western Kentucky, at Penn State, the bye week. Michigan State, Ohio State, at Maryland, at Michigan, Rutgers, Minnesota, and at Purdue. I think they'll beat Iowa, and they'll beat Idaho. That's an FCS team. Cincinnati. That is a tough game, but they'll beat them. That's a top 10 matchup. At Western Kentucky, at Penn State, then the bye week. Oh, by the way, they're 5-0 going into the bye week. They'll beat Michigan State. They'll beat Ohio State. They'll beat Maryland. They'll beat Michigan. They'll beat Rutgers. They'll beat Minnesota. And they'll beat Purdue. I think Indiana is going to go undefeated. I'm probably wrong. And you can roast me when I am wrong. And you can roast me now. But I think Indiana is the best team in the Big Ten East this year. Because Ohio State is a freshman quarterback and Indiana has the potential to win. So they're a bowl contender, obviously. They're a Big Ten contender. And I think Indiana, if they go 12-0, ultimately makes the playoff. Purdue. You've got Oregon State, UConn, at Notre Dame, Illinois, Minnesota, the bye week, Iowa, Wisconsin, Michigan State, at Ohio State, at Northwestern, and Indiana. They'll beat Oregon State and UConn, but they won't beat Notre Dame. There's not a chance that happens, especially on the road. Then they'll beat Illinois and Minnesota. Then they have a tough stretch after the bye. At Illinois, then Wisconsin, Nebraska, and Michigan State. That's all losses. Then they got Northwestern and Indiana. I don't think they'll make a bowl, but they have a chance to snag Michigan State or Nebraska. They don't play Michigan. They won't win the Big Ten or make the playoff, however. Northwestern has Michigan State, Indiana State, at Duke, Ohio, Nebraska, the bye week, Rutgers, Michigan, Minnesota, Iowa, at Wisconsin, Purdue, and Illinois. They won't beat Michigan State. They'll beat Indiana, and they'll beat Duke. They'll beat Ohio. They'll lose to Nebraska. Then they have the bye. They'll beat Rutgers. They probably won't beat Rutgers if they didn't have that bye. Then they'll beat Michigan, or lose to Michigan, sorry. They'll beat Minnesota. They'll lose to Iowa. They'll lose to Wisconsin. They'll lose to Purdue, and they'll beat Illinois. They'll make a bowl at 6-6, but they won't win the Big Ten or make the playoff. Illinois. They have Nebraska, UTSA, at Virginia, Maryland, Purdue, Charlotte, Wisconsin, the bye, Penn State, Rutgers, at Minnesota, another bye, at Iowa, and Northwestern. They have a week 0 game against Nebraska. That is why they have 2 byes. Same with Nebraska. I believe Nebraska has 2 byes as well. They do. They won't beat Nebraska. They'll beat UTSA. They won't beat Virginia. They won't beat Maryland. They won't beat Purdue. They will beat Charlotte, and they won't beat Wisconsin. Heading into their first bye, they are 4-2. Then they've got Penn State, Rutgers, at Minnesota. They lose all 3 of those games. They are 2-8 heading into their second bye, and they won't beat Iowa, and they won't beat Northwestern. They go 2-10, not a chance to make a bowl to the Big Ten championship or the playoff. Then Wisconsin. They have Penn State in Eastern Michigan, then the bye, then a neutral site game against Notre Dame at Soldier Field, then Michigan, at Illinois, Army, at Purdue, Iowa, at Rutgers, Northwestern, Nebraska, and at Minnesota. They'll beat Penn State, they'll beat Eastern Michigan, then they have the bye. They have a chance to beat Notre Dame, but I don't think they will. Then they have Michigan, that's a win. At Illinois, they'll beat Army, they'll beat Purdue, they'll beat Iowa, they'll beat Rutgers, they'll beat Northwestern, they'll beat Nebraska, and they'll beat Minnesota. They'll go 11-1, and I have them going 9-0 in the Big Ten. They'll make a bowl, they're a Big Ten contender, and they are absolutely a playoff contender. Then Minnesota. They have Ohio State, Miami of Ohio, at Colorado, Bowling Green, Purdue, the bye week, Nebraska, Maryland, at Northwestern, Illinois, at Iowa, at Indiana, Wisconsin. There's no way they're beating Ohio State. They'll beat Miami. They'll lose to Colorado, especially on the road. They've got Bowling Green at Purdue. That's a loss, and Bowling Green's a win. Then Nebraska, Maryland, and Northwestern are all losses. Illinois, that's a win. At Iowa, at Indiana, and Wisconsin are all losses. They won't make a bowl. They don't even have a chance, in my opinion. The Big Ten and playoff are out of reach for them. Iowa. They have Indiana, at Iowa State, Kent State, Colorado State, Penn State, Purdue, the bye, at Wisconsin, at Northwestern, Minnesota, Illinois, and at Nebraska. These are all winnable games for Iowa. But it's a tough schedule. Iowa's one of the best teams in the Big Ten. They're like a top 3 or 4 team. They'll lose to Indiana, even at home. At Iowa State's a win. Kent State's a win. Colorado State's a win. Penn State's a win. And Purdue's a win. They head into the bye 5-1. You know they're well rested. It's a road game against Wisconsin. They haven't had a tough game since Iowa State, so they'll lose. They'll beat Northwestern, Minnesota, Illinois, and Nebraska to finish the season 10-2, 7-2 in the Big Ten. They'll make a bowl. They are a Big Ten contender because they're all winnable games. They can go 12-0, and I will not be surprised if they go 12-0. And they can make the playoff if they go 12-0. They haven't gone undefeated since 2015, and then that was ended by Michigan State in the Big Ten title. Nebraska, the final team. at Illinois, Fordham, Buffalo, at Oklahoma, Michigan State, Northwestern, Michigan, at Minnesota, the bye, Purdue, at Ohio State, another bye, at Wisconsin and Iowa. What a tough draw from the Big Ten East. Michigan, Michigan State, and Ohio State. A lot of years those are the top three teams. Not this year, but a lot of years. So you got at Illinois is a win. Fordham and Buffalo are wins. There's no way they beat Oklahoma, especially on the road. Michigan State, that's a loss. I gotta give it to my Sparties. Northwestern's a win. Michigan's a win. At Minnesota's a win. So they'll head into their first bye. Let's see, 6-2, probably ranked. But then they hit the gauntlet. Purdue and Ohio State. After Ohio State, especially. They'll beat Purdue and they'll lose to Ohio State. The bye. Then they got Wisconsin and Iowa. Those are both losses, but winnable games. Because Nebraska is usually a tough, nitty-gritty football team. They're not a Big Ten or playoff contender, though. So here are my rankings. In the Big Ten East, you got Indiana, 12-0. 9-0 in the Big Ten. Then Ohio State at number 2, 11-1 and 8-1. Number 3, Michigan State, 9-3, 7-2. Penn State, 7-5, 4-5. Michigan, 5-7, 3-6. Maryland, 5-7, 3-6. Michigan has that tiebreaker because they beat Maryland. And Rutgers, 4-8, 1-8 in last. In the West, Wisconsin, 11-1 and 9-0. Iowa, 10-2 and 7-2. Nebraska, 7-5, 5-4. Purdue, 5-7, 3-6. Northwestern, 6-6, 3-6. The only reason I know a 5-7 team is ahead of a 6-6 team, but Purdue beat Northwestern. Then we've got Minnesota at 3-9, 1-8, and Illinois 2-10, 0-9. And I think Indiana ultimately wins the Big Ten and goes on to the college football playoff. Ohio State could make it with a few wild cards, but there are 4 teams, in my opinion, with a chance to make the playoffs from the Big Ten, that being Indiana, Wisconsin, Ohio State, and Iowa. And the only 2 that I think have I think there's only 1 team that has a chance to win the playoff if they get there, and that's Ohio State. But I think they'll get upset in the season, so they won't get there. Let's see. And there are several teams with a good chance to make a bowl. If you're 5-7 or better, you have a good chance to make it. At least if I predict you to go 5-7. So, with a good chance to make a bowl, there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 teams from the Big Ten with a good chance to make a bowl game. So that'll end up my video. And I log out for the day. And I let you guys decide what conference is next tomorrow. You got the Big 12, the SEC, the ACC, and the Pac-12. T-Reaper out.